Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
The team at Cobra Golf are set to introduce additions to its collection of King putters, making the offerings available in a sleek black colorway, the perfect complement to the limited edition black LTDX drivers and King black wedges. The lineup of black putters includes both King 3D printed and King Vintage Series models, along with two new mallet styles, the King Cuda and Cuda 40. All King Collection putters come standard with the Cobra Super Stroke Traction Tour 2.0 grip and KBS Tour 120 shaft. The new additions to the King 3D printed and Vintage series will be available from July this year. For more information on the entire King family of products, visit cobragolf.com. This is the 19th tee. Kieran Marsh, Nathan Drudy back with you for the second time this week. Drew, it's good to have your company as always.
Happy to be here, KM.
We flagged at the back end of the PGA Championship review that a few things had happened over last weekend, understandably lost in the fanfare of the action from Oak Hill, but we felt necessary to cover because they are important. And so we have a brief, a mini, if you will, episode coming your way this evening. First and foremost, some great results over in the US as it relates to both the US Women's and US Men's Opens and Australians qualifying, or at least advancing in the qualification stages of those two tournaments. So I want to start with the US Women's Open because that is a confirmed spot in this year's tournament at Pebble Beach for Gabby Ruffles. An incredible season has got even better for Ruffles. Of course, we mentioned just in recent weeks, she'd won her second Epson Tour event of the season. She only requires one more win on the Epson Tour this year to automatically promote to the LPGA Tour. And she's booked her spot in the US Women's Open via the 36-hole qualifying event at the Vancouver Golf Club last week. She finished at 7 under par, winning by 2 shots and securing her spot in the field. Of course, the US Women's Open, richest prize pool in women's golf, US $10 million. Minjee Lee is the defending champion of that tournament, where she'll go and defend her crown this year. But Druids, Gabby Ruffles continues to trend in a rapidly upward direction in terms of the trajectory of her career and booking a place in the US Women's Open seemingly pretty comfortably with a 2-stroke victory at the qualifying event. Just reward for what's been an incredible few months.
Yeah, well, I think we often talk about the crop of talent coming through the women's game as being arguably stronger than the men's side. And, we've waxed lyrical about Gabby many times before. And there's no doubt that, experiences like playing in a major are going to just do her the world of good, even if, the results don't go her way in terms of, I'm sure she's got goals around playing the weekend, making the cut, whatever it might be. But if things don't go her way, a little bit like Dave Micheluzzi over the weekend at the PGA Championship, just the experience that it's going to give Gabby is going to be enormous. So, it's incredibly exciting for her. And I think, she's slowly / quickly rising up the ranks of Australian women's golf. So, for me, it's just going to be about the the experience that she's going to gain by playing in a major championship, and not to mention obviously the prize pool that you mentioned there is going to help too if she can get to the weekend.
Third time she will have played the US Women's Open. She actually finished in a tie for 13th, the 2020 Open, having won the 2019 US Women's Amateur the year prior, which earned her spot in the 2020 field. So, she's not, I suppose, unfamiliar with the environment of a major championship, and T13 as an amateur at the time, incredible finish. One thing that is fortuitous is the timing of qualifying for this event at Pebble. She's, of course, a Trojan. She plays a college golf at the University of Southern California. Not exactly a home game, but it's somewhere, and she even said herself in the quotes, one of her favorite, if not her favorite golf courses in the States, and somewhere she's played on more than one occasion. So not necessarily going there we spoke in great depth about Pebble recently on an episode. And if you missed that, make sure to go back and have a listen. But an historic venue in golf, one with, a great presence as you described when you went there, and a place where she seems quite comfortable. So that will be no doubt an advantage for Gabby when she arrives at the 2023 Women's US Open.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think selfishly, I'm really looking forward to seeing how, I guess, Pebble sets up. It's got such a great history in the game. So to host, I guess, what's going to be an historic event and for Gabby to be in there. I'm not sure how many Australians that leaves us with in the field, Marshy. I don't know if we have that number off the top of our head. Probably not.
We don't. We don't as yet.
It's going to be good regardless. So, really exciting for Gabby and I guess Australian golf as well. And like I say, it's another feather in the cap of the women's group coming through. So, yeah, pumped for Gabby, and I'm sure we're going to have a great contingent there as well.
And we will, of course, take a look at that tournament ahead of time. The US Women's Open coming up at Pebble Beach later in the year. On the men's side, Drew, it's no confirmed spots, but advancing through local qualifying, two of the favourites of this podcast, our great friend, the Wizard Justin Warren.
Yes.
He did it at the Country Club of Troy, which is a great name. He finished. Where did he finish, Droots? He didn't win that tournament, but high enough to advance through.
Yeah, he had a 67. I think he was either first. I think he might have either been first or second. I can't remember. But this is how bad our research was, Marshy. Before we hit the button, we should have just gone through and clicked a few more buttons because there's a couple of other Aussies that I found that have got through. But if you keep waxing lyrical about the two that we know, wonderful. I'll finish off the work here, and then you can round back to me if that works.
So it's interesting in the sense that we often find it intriguing to plot the path of people out the back end of the Australian summer who haven't picked up status on either the European or the PGA tours. Now, for Wiz, we've spoken to him in depth on this show about his journey through the US, particularly last year, where he went deep into Corn Ferry Tour qualifying school without necessarily getting all the way. He loves the States, of course, played his college golf at Little Rock in Arkansas. He goes to the Country Club of Troy in New York State, I believe it is, Drudes, and plays well enough to go through. Gale Force is the other one that we were aware of prior to the beginning of this episode, and from what Drudes tells me, we're going to add a few more to the list coming up. But Daniel Gale actually had a win at his sectional qualifying event. Drew, you'll have to remind me if it isn't too much trouble.
No,
in the current
I'm sure you can see my eyes scroll.
It was that Gailey won.
Yeah, I do have that.
Your eyes are working harder than your hands.
The Paramount Country Club, he had a 67, so he's through to the next stage as well. Obviously, as you mentioned, had the win. Yeah,
Gailey winning that sectional qualifying. To give you context on what, or I suppose the significance of sectional qualifying, or what they call local qualifying in the US Open system. So the US Open's tagline famously is "From Many One." What the US Open hangs its hat on is it is truly the tournament that you or I, Druids, could, by a stroke of miracle and one of the all-time great heaters, actually play. Not you and I physically, but people like you and I in the States, and the fact that you can turn up, you can play local qualifying, you progress through to final qualifying, and then they take, I believe it's 56, so I'm just checking the numbers here, out of qualifying events. 59, I should say, out of qualified events go into the field of 156 at the US Open at the LA Country Club in 25 days' time. So to give you some context of what Daniel Gale and Justin Warren and the others that we're about to list off have achieved.
Waza did win. We should remember. We should mention
Waza
that.
did win.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Shouldn't take the win away from the Wizard. So a win for Waz, a win for Gailey. Let's rattle off the others actually before we contextualise the achievement. What else are we looking at from an Australian perspective in sectional qualifying in the US?
Some elite level padding from you just then to allow me to get to the bottom of that list, because it's not a very handy website. So yeah, obviously in terms of friends of the show, Wazza and Gailey, as you've mentioned, Hamish Murray, an amateur who I'll put my hand up and say I don't know much if anything, about Hamish. He finished T2 actually at the Territory Golf and Country Club in Oklahoma, so he goes through. Jack Trent, T4 at the Casablanca Country Club in Nevada. Grant Booth, T3 in Arizona. Aaron Price, T4 in Dallas. And at Pinewild, out in Pinehurst, Matt Goggin getting through as well. So a grand total of what I could find in my very hastily researched number. We've got 2, 4, 7 Australians going through to the next round of US Open qualifying, which is fantastic news. Obviously, a long way still to go in terms of things, but yeah, that's great news that we've got 7 going through.
And no small feat from Matt Goggin, might I add, not least of which because it was at Pinehurst, which is a challenge, even on a good day, but primarily because I would suggest most of Matt Goggin's attention right now, despite being based in the US, is on finalising 7 Mile Beach.
Yes,
on,
that's very true.
The coast of Tasmania, 25 minutes out of the Hobart airport.
Yes.
So good for you, Matty Goggin. So to contextualise the achievement in terms of progressing through local qualifying, 9,693 competitors entered into local qualifying events around the United States. 530 people progressed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about roughly 5% of people who entered have progressed through to the next stage, of which those 7 Aussies are within that group. So an enormous achievement we will keep an eye on. Obviously, ironically, despite it being a 5% success rate, it's probably this next stage of the 530 kind of going into final qualifying and then getting in amongst the 59 who actually qualify for the field is harder. It's kind of like getting your handicap from 1 to scratch being the hardest actual jump in golf. But we will keep a keen eye on progress. Last thing I want to say on this, seems like, and I haven't done this for a while and I'm reticent to go too deep, but I just feel like yes, we host a podcast. Yes, we're deeply invested into Australian golf, but probably would have been a good content piece for the Golf Australia website to maybe just do a nice sort of wrap up on progress of the Australians doing sectional qualifying in the US rather than you or I having to drove through the US Open and USGA website. I mean, I know there was a major happening. I know Cam Davis finished in a tie for 4th and had a great weekend, but a little, 300-word wrap up on the website today probably wouldn't have been a big ask. Just saying.
Would have helped us out greatly, but we'll continue to keep everyone updated. So good number going through, which is exciting. So happy to see that.
Excellent number. And then just briefly in other news, Drudes, only one other thing I want to touch on tonight. It kind of slipped under the radar mainly because there was a major championship happening at the time. But late last week in Brisbane, there was the official launch of the 2023 Australian PGA Championship returning to Royal Queensland at the back end of November. We will be well and truly into the swing of coverage of the Australian Summer by that stage, and we look forward to bringing you comprehensive coverage of that event. It was launched, a promotional event, as with most things, when there's state government contracts involved and politicians like to be front and center of good news. So it was well attended by local sporting personalities, a couple of members of the Broncos. I think Usman Khawaja was down there from the Brisbane Heat. Bit of a hit and giggle at the South Bank Beach. If people are familiar with Brisbane, they had a little setup with a floating green and hitting off the sand of the South Bank Beach. So a nice visual. Announced the tournament, and then in amongst the subsequent press conference, an earnest journalist who'd clearly done a little bit of reading did in fact ask a question of the tourism minister here in Queensland, Sterling Hinchliffe, who also happens to be the Minister for Sport, whether or not there'd been any conversations with either Greg Norman or any other representative of Live Golf about bringing an event to Queensland, given the raging success of the event Live Adelaide at the Grange Golf Club. And Minister Hinchliffe did in fact confirm that Tourism Queensland had held at least preliminary discussions with Live about the possibility of an event in Queensland. So I just thought it was good to get on the record because, as we know, we set it off the back of the huge success that was the event in Adelaide, we'd be surprised if there wasn't more than one event in Australia next year. We know that Greg Norman spent some time in Melbourne prior. We know that allegedly he was heading up to Joondalup as well over your way post the Live Adelaide event, and it seems as though Queensland now throwing their hat in the ring as well. Not surprising. Maybe surprising to those one or two members from the Grange Golf Club who've been vocal and made headlines around the world about their dissatisfaction with the state in which their course was left. They sound like they'd be wonderful dinner guests with those people in Tasmania opposed to the stadium and the team down there as well. Boo progress, as they say. But not at all surprised, Druids, that the Queensland government now throwing the hat in the ring for an event, given the economic impact and really just the eyeballs that were on Adelaide for the period of that tournament.
Yeah, well, I guess that's four states that we know that have had definite conversations. One of obviously went through with it in South Australia. Queensland, of course, there was the conversation sort of pre-schedule coming out around Live of the conversation in New South Wales. We're not sure what that club was. I'm also told over here that Lake Karrinyup was that Greg toured Lake Karrinyup while he was over here, so sort of exploring two options. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that that Live Golf is going to have too many eyeballs on local events here in Australia, but the WA Open is being played at Joondalup this year, which may give some level of indication of what that might be like in terms of hosting a tournament, because it's not the greatest spectator course. So it might be a little too difficult with given the numbers that Live attracted. So yeah, certainly getting some traction to I guess get another event here in Australia. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that kind of comes to fruition. KM, I do. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's going to be fascinating, to be honest, to see what they do.
As do I. I know for a fact that there were definitely conversations held between Brookwater here in Queensland and Live Golf prior to a confirmation of the Grange getting that event. And I'm sure that they weren't the only ones. I'm sure there are conversations with clubs around the country. What I find fascinating is two things. To me, it's different when it's in Adelaide, because Adelaide is a market ignored by the tour here in Australia. It's the lift and shift of the model in America. We're going to go to a market that's been ignored traditionally by the home tour. Having it in Queensland, let's face it, if it's in Queensland, it's in Southeast Queensland. It's not going, with all due respect to our friends tuning in Townsville or Cairns, it's not going up there. It's going to be in Southeast Queensland. The tour's blue ribbon event is in Brisbane. Like, that dynamic, that's completely different to it being played in Adelaide or Perth for that matter. Or, to a less extent, Sydney or Melbourne, but that's a very different dynamic of it being in the same market.
Yes.
And I also think it's interesting that I'm not surprised now, not only because it was a huge success in Adelaide, but because there's a difference being first past the post. Adelaide literally had to outbid everyone else. There's a difference now being Queensland or Western Australia or New South Wales, Victoria competing to be the second, because you're not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily become about, it's going back to Adelaide, that's red. So now it's probably a strategic decision more than anything else, rather than a fiscal one for Live about where we go. First one's always going to be who's paying us the most money. Correct. Who's the most accommodating, who's going to make it work for us. This second one becomes about, as I said, it's what makes most sense. And that's fascinating. So a definite watch this space.
Completely agree. I actually have a couple of things that I have just found, if I can bring those to the table very, very quickly. I'm going to keep this very short. There is golf still going on in Australia at the minute. The Pro-Am circuit is on. It's been over here in Western Australia, actually. Dean Lawson got the win at Lakelands, the Pro-Am up there by one stroke. Tom Addy, who is a amateur from over here in WA, quite highly touted, won probably the biggest of the ones that we have in the Joondalup Resort Classic which was run over the past couple of days. So back-to-back 67s for Tom Addy. He won that today. And our good friend Aaron Wilkin actually won down in Kwinana. So congratulations to Aaron. He turned down the opportunity to play with me at Hammersley Golf Course to go and have a practice at Kwinana, which I thought was unbelievably rude, but did him a great deal of satisfaction because he managed to get the win. So I'm only joking about it being very rude. 3 quick results. One just that I've pulled from Golf Australia here came out a couple of days ago of things not super interesting for most people, but I'm sure we'll have a look at it. 3 changes to the Golf Australia board coming up as well, Marshy, including...
I did see this, yes.
Yeah, including Andrew Newbold of probably Hawthorn Footy Club. Would probably be his most known role. So he will conclude his second and final 3-year term as an appointed director next year. And then we've also got 2 board vacancies as well as elected directors. So they'll be done in October. And the last thing I've got, Marshy, is the Cameron Smith Scholarship has been awarded for this year. Jeffrey Guan, who we know is just an immense talent, and Western Australia's Joseph Buttress were the recipients of that scholarship. Joseph was in the same group as Mika when I caddied for him and didn't put his best foot forward that week, but very young and can play. I think he's won a couple of sort of junior amateur titles in South Australia and Tasmania, so he's going to be a very good golfer. They are the 5 things that I wanted to bring to the table that I'm wrapping up in 90 seconds.
There was one other, and it's just occurred to me that it happened. I'm in a mad scramble to get back on the Golf Australia website to find a result. There was a team event, Drew. State-based team event.
Oh, yes, there was. I did see this.
A week or 2 ago, which I just thought it would be best to make mention of. There were some names playing in it. Harrison Crowe played really what you'd imagine be one of his final events as an amateur in the New South Wales side. Saw Lincoln Morgan, the brother of Jed Morgan, the Queensland side. Connor Fuchs, another well-known amateur, played as well.
Are you talking about the Oz Interstate?
I think
that's what. Yes, New South Wales. Exactly. Yes. New South Wales won that. They beat South Australia in the final. So, yeah, some good names in there. Jai Picken as well in New South Wales. Very, very good player, Jai. Have seen him play a little bit over here in Western Australia. So, some good names. Yeah, good call out.
I could be completely wrong. I am of the understanding from memory, New South Wales lost both of their games on the opening day. They lost at least one. So they have genuinely come from the clouds because it's I believe, a 3-day tournament, not the type of tournament you can really afford to drop many, if any, matches. So they have genuinely the equivalent of, 6 wide at the turn, and they've screamed down the outside to take it. So congratulations to New South Wales victors at the Interstate. That, dare I say, unless there are any final bids, is probably it for the week. A big one, obviously, if you haven't listened to the PGA Championship review from the beginning of the week, make sure you go back and listen to that. First time we've had a little 2-episode in a little while for the week, so I hope you've enjoyed our voices. If not, give us some feedback.
Why have you listened?
Yeah. That's probably a very fair question. We always enjoy the feedback. Obviously more 4 or 5 stars than 1 or 2, but either way, if you like it, if you don't, we are not averse to feedback. So make sure you share it. Make sure you're getting involved in the questions of the week via the Instagram, particularly pages, but also the Facebook pages. The most recent one we posted, Drudes, was how often are you keeping score? Which I actually found really interesting because probably more often than not, I haven't done a great deal. I actually played a little 9 holes on the weekend, which is rare for me, playing in general, but getting out, and it was really nice. I played in a 4-ball, and we played a little bit of 4-ball, not best ball, a little bit of 4-ball aggregate score on the whole match play. So
Nice.
it's good. I really enjoyed it, actually. That's probably the first time I've genuinely counted my shots for a little while. But it was good to see we had probably both ends of the spectrum in terms of people being very earnest in their scorekeeping. And, those that just said it's more for my mental health that I
Yes.
just take the walk and enjoy being out in nature for 3 or 4 hours, which is very much aligned to where I'm at, I think, in terms of my golf. So that was good. So, yeah, keep an eye out. That'll be posted Friday, Saturdays each week as we kind of flagged when we launched it. Some provocative, most, if not all, you'll no doubt have an opinion on. So we encourage you to share it. And, we'll provide some of the best answers each and every week. Drews, that'll probably do us. It's been a pleasure, my friend, to talk to you for an extended period of time across this week. I enjoy that as always. Good to see the Oregon wardrobe getting another run.
Still
It's
getting
on about
a
a once every 3 episodes rotation at the moment for the 19th tee, so that's good.
right.
For those tuning into the YouTube. And we'll be back, as always, in your ear early next week.